suppose we'll start off with Damien Duff leaving the Republic of Ireland backroom team. The question I would ask is why? No reason given in the FAI statement. The Irish Examiner reporting Duff was unhappy about the way the whole Videogate controversy last year was handled by the FAI. Is that it, really? Daniel, what do you think of all this?
Yeah, it's a bit of a shock, all right. I mean, I have to admit now I'm sort of coming back after a couple of weeks off, and so I was sort of doing a bit of homework last night, catching up on a couple of things, and then bang, that announcement drops. So it's a massive surprise, I think. The piece you're referring to there, I think David Snade piece this morning, related to the investigation. And listen, that certainly tallies. There was certainly chat around that time that he was very, very unhappy with the FAI, how it all panned out, how they had maybe conducted that investigation, that there needed to be an investigation at all, and that basically he had difficulties in working for the FAI, I guess, and maybe just wasn't happy with how they handled that matter, and maybe just wouldn't necessarily be a massive FAI fan overall. And I guess you're looking at someone like Damien Duff that I don't think he necessarily needs the money from this gig as such. You know what I mean? That this is something that it's not, unlike Roy Keane's $500,000 a year assistant manager's job. It wouldn't necessarily, I don't think, be a well-paid job now. And I think clearly, Damien Duff had frustrations and decided to act on them by leaving. At the same time, though, it's not good for Stephen Kenny because he tried to persuade him to stay, it appears, and wasn't able to do so. And when you haven't won in 8 matches and there's a sort of a debate around how things are going, it's very easy to spin it as, well, there's another person leaving, or there's someone who's looked to head off now, and that adds to the a sort of a bad news vibe, which isn't good for him and good for his regime. Overall, even if it does appear that the issues are not between them, not between Duff and Kenny, it's more Duff and the FAI. But it's probably left Stephen Kenny a bit exposed now, in the sense that he's without one of his assistants, who was a big part of his the structured team that he put together.
Yeah, no reason given in the FAI statement. I'm sure it'll all come out in the wash at some stage. I think it's a strange one. Stephen Elliott, how big a blow is this for Stephen Kenny? I've said it before on the show that he deserves a campaign. He deserves a World Cup campaign like all previous managers have got, but he's not coming across as a lucky general at the moment, Stephen Kenny.
No, I think he always, like you, I was very surprised when I seen the news of Duffer stepping down from his role. It's very strange. Obviously, it's easy to say they've lost 8 games in a row, bit of that kind of sinking ship, lead to sinking ship. But I don't know. I just think Stephen Kenny, he'd be very disappointed. I think he's probably, when he became Ireland manager, you know what I mean, this is a huge job for Stephen Kenny. He's worked ever so hard to get this role. And I don't know, when you appoint, obviously Damien Duff, he's an absolute legend, great footballer. From what I'm hearing, he's a really, really good football coach. But I still think Stephen Kenny, when he appointed Duffer as one of his assistants, I would be too unsure of how close a relationship them pair have, working together. And I didn't see any connection there. I'm sure they'd met each other over a time and that. But I just think when you're a manager and you're going into that role, like a big job like the Ireland job, I think you probably your staff, you got to appoint staff that you really trust and and people that you can kind of that'll stand with you no matter how it's going. And I don't know. I just think whether Stephen Kenny, obviously Damien Duff was a big name, and he's a huge Irish legend, as I mentioned, and it might have been one of them where he kind of brings somebody like that in who's not long out of playing himself. But I just think when you're a manager, I've spoken to managers before, and the most important thing is to have people around him that you can trust, and people that are singing off the same hymn sheet. And I don't know whether Stephen Kenny may be regretting bringing him in now, or because let's be honest, it's not great if you're a manager of a national team and this is your plan, a big chance like Stephen Kenny where all eyes are on him, and all of a sudden you're kind of a few months into your role and you've got one of the most high-profile member of your staff just leaving. Now I know it's been mentioned there, like you said, about not being happy at the FAI, but at the same time you got a job to do, and I think it's, as I said, we'll hear the full story, but I just think it's a little bit disappointing from Damien's point of view. I don't know, I just think maybe something's happened that we don't know about, but I just don't think Stephen Kenny may be a little bit thinking, do you know what, have I done the right thing? I know obviously Duffo with his name and that, but is it the right thing? Sometimes you just need people around you that you can trust and kind of I don't know. It's just very strange for me. I don't know what you think, Johnny.
Yeah, it's a hell of a signal of self-belief by Damien Duff to do this, because he has abandoned the management team. Rory Higgins, Stephen Kenny and Keith Andrews and Damien Duff and obviously Alan Kelly. That was the team. And, at a really critical time for Irish football, in a job that, as Dan said, it's not financial motivation that he was with Ireland, but this was a job that he would have taken very seriously. And for him to do this after obviously being pleaded with by Stephen Kenny to stay on, it's a hell of a sign of confidence in himself and where he's going, and the complete inability would seem to put up with any crap. And David Snade's piece, which we've referenced there, obviously it made reference to that Duff, he just does not take any nonsense wherever he's gone. We heard this when he was looking after the Shamrock Rovers under 15s, that there was kind of almost like an army regime. He was really, really serious about the job. He took that into Celtic, where by all accounts he was very well regarded. The little kind of information that I could get this morning in terms of what happened here, what I heard back was just that the Ireland players really had great regard for Duff. And I suppose a couple of things, John, this is obviously not good for Stephen Kenny. That's not to say he can't get over this, but it's definitely damaging for him, because as much as he's probably been preparing for this over the last couple of weeks or so, he now needs to replace Damien Duff. Bear in mind that there were doubts about Alan Kelly continuing, that kind of seemed to have been erased, but that was mooted after that whole video nonsense. But I suppose what I would like to focus on here is the fact that the FAI's, their AGM there a couple of weeks ago, when it was mentioned that bang in the middle of the World Cup draw, the FAI sent out a press release with its figures bang in the middle of the World Cup draw, which suggested that there was a real sniff of the old FAI there, because the timing was very, very suspicious. And Barrett had said that was unfortunate at the AGM. That's in terms of Jonathan Hill kind of coming into the organisation, where Roy Barrett said the time was unfortunate. The timing of that press release last night, to me, at 9:41 p.m. on a Friday night, again, I mean, fool me once, shame on you and all that, but why was it sent out at 9:41? And according to David Snade's piece, he's not happy with that, Damien Duff. So I think the FAI has a lot of questions to answer, because if that piece is to be believed, Gary Owens met Duff in relation to how Videogate, or whatever you want to call it, was dealt with, and Damien Duff was seemingly so unhappy with the whole repercussions of that he's made what is really a bit of a bombshell of a decision coming out of it, because it puts a lot more focus now on this so-called new FAI, the post-John Delaney FAI, and it's kind of fumbling from one crisis to another at this stage. And this was a crisis that 100% was avoidable. And Ireland now has lost a key member of a very promising management team. Some might say the most promising coach of the whole lot is now gone, and it's not a good start to 2021 at all.
Yeah, well, we'll see what the FAI have to say. Daniel, it just seems like, from one thing to another, things are going wrong for Stephen Kenny. Like, you have the issue in the plane, that mad stuff about people where they sat on the plane, the Slovakia losing on penalties, the fact that you've had Dave McGoldrick retiring, haven't been able to buy a goal, Shane Duffy's form has gone south. Everything seems to be going wrong before the World Cup campaign has even begun. Yeah,
no, listen, it's a nightmare run. There's no other way of phrasing it, really. I think, as much as you can point to, like Darragh O'Shea and Jason Knight and certain young players who've stepped forward, Caoimhín Kelleher, I guess, in terms of short-term good news stories, we've very much been starved of them. The only positive thing you can say is that, listen, there's still, we are still in the early weeks of January. There's 10 weeks until I think the squad meet up for the Serbia game. That's enough time to get someone else in to try and familiarise yourselves with them and hopefully hit the ground running. Like, I think I've touched on it before. I wrote about it recently. The way that Ireland's year is set up, they have that really, really important game away to Serbia in March. Then after that, they play a home to Luxembourg, which is a game you think they should win. And then they don't have any more competitive games until September. So really, what they need to do is get through Belgrade in March, not lose that game, And then that maybe gives you a bit of breathing room and a chance to sort of take stock and take a breath. And they'll have a camp in the summer, hopefully, where, if there is a new coach or, as it is, I think they've already struggled to integrate some of the new coaching staff and various backroom staff, because the hotels have been weird because of COVID. They haven't been able to mingle and interact in the way that they normally would in terms of big meals and that type of thing. So they've been weird camps for everyone, and this doesn't help that someone who's a recognisable face and as has been mentioned would have been a good link with the players is now gone. So whoever comes in now will have maybe two training sessions before the Serbia game. Now, in saying that, you only ever talk about things like a number 3 or a number 2, number 3, and other ancillary stuff when results aren't going well. And ultimately, like, it's still Stephen Kenny who has the ultimate responsibility, you would think, and it's the team and the well-being of players and the approach and the attitude to Serbia, which will set the tone for the year. And they have an opportunity then to take everything into their own hands, to take their fate into their own hands, take the story back into their own hands. But it's very hard to avoid the conclusion that that's such a big game, because, as you say, there's two sides of it. If you don't have a good result against Serbia, then it adds to the previous 8 games, and you have a long time till September, and the stench is sort of lingering. Whereas if you can get a good result, maybe he gets the chance to take a breath and really start his to really sort of settle into the job, because it sort of feels like he hasn't had the feet under the table yet, because they've been standing up dealing with crisis after crisis, and this one just doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, the sense I have is that March is going to be a reset around this. And Damien Duff, Stephen, you played with him in the international setup. He's a Premier League winner with Chelsea. He played at the World Cup. He has got the medals as a player, and surely that would help in terms of telling players in the squad just like how it should be at certain times in the dressing room. He has that, I suppose, he has that gravitas. But is his departure a blow if we start getting results? Like, are the players going to be really be put out by this, do you think?
Listen, obviously, if we come around, like Johnny mentioned, in the games and we get a result in Belgrade and we beat Luxembourg, everybody will be saying Damien who, but like it'll kind of be one of them where it doesn't matter. A little bit like Daniel mentioned there, like you only look at these things obviously when the results aren't going well. But I still find it ever so strange. Like, even if results are going well, that somebody, especially with the crisis we're in and the problems that Stephen Kenny has already had, I would just be thinking, like, if you're a member of his staff and you really are behind him, I don't think you walk out in the situation even if you don't get on with the FAI, you got to look at the bigger picture of like kind of being an Irish coach, helping the Irish team. And I don't know, unless Damien Duff has been offered a really good role somewhere else, but I don't know, he doesn't seem to stay around long in his roles. He's kind of, in his short kind of coaching career, he seemed to kind of moved about a fair bit, Damien. So I don't know, I was really, really shocked when I seen that news last night, especially after Damien had come out so strongly kind of about the video, kind of saying it was nothing and kind of backing Stephen Kenny after that. So yeah, I'm sure there's more to the story, but it's definitely not. It's definitely not good for Stephen Kenny. Like I mentioned earlier on, he needs his staff more than ever now to be behind him, and they need to be a team together. And now we're talking about him potentially trying to get somebody else in to kind of fulfil that role. And we're talking about Stephen managing Ireland now, and is he kind of rush somebody in and maybe put somebody in there that he doesn't really want because he needs somebody in there, or is he? I don't know. It's not an ideal situation at all. But I said, hopefully, one way or the other, he can kind of rally the team and the squad of players, whoever he picks, come the games in March, and we can get that result. Because at the end of the day, we need to start picking up results, whether Damien Duff is there or not. And ultimately, Stephen Kenny tenure will be judged on that. So I don't know. It's interesting, but I think Stephen Kenny hasn't got time to be kind of dwelling on Damien Duff. He needs to find a solution rather than what the problem kind of arises from it.